Welcome to the Cannabis Nurses Network Member Spotlight session, where we gather in community to listen and learn and lift the voices of nurses, honoring the sacred path of healing. This month, we step into the wisdom of our roots with the theme Ancient Wisdom and Cannabis. To guide this exploration, we're honored to welcome Shakira Franklyn, a registered nurse, school nurse, nurse midwife, and wisdom-seeking traveler who walks the world with reverence for the knowledge of elders and the power of ancestral medicine. From the islands of the Caribbean to South Africa to South America, Shakira has immersed herself in traditional ways of knowing, listening deeply to healers, midwives, and plant medicine wisdom keepers, whose teachings remind us cannabis isn't new, it is remembered. Shakira's work as a nurse is both spiritual and scientific, blending evidence-informed care with lived experience, ceremony, and intuition. She shows us what happens when we reclaim our healing lineage and root our modern practice into ancient ways. And so we want to welcome you, Shakira.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here and be a part of this member spotlight. And every time you introduce me, Heather, I just like, who is that lady that she's talking about? Sometimes I don't even know that it's me, but I'm happy to be here. It's been a minute since I kind of checked in really good. So it just feels great to be stepping into this conversation with you today.
Thank you so much for being here. And I want to start off my first question, Shakira. Your path has taken you across countries and cultures. What first led you to seek ancestral knowledge and traditional healing ways?
I would say one of the things that travel has been really a major factor in understanding that different cultures heal in different ways and use different types of medicines that I wasn't even aware of. And that first really came to play, I would say, really through my grandmother, who was not born in this country. She was born in the Caribbean in Guadeloupe and was raised in Martinique and Panama. And when she came to the United States, she had my father and his older brother at the time, and they were in Boston. And I was born in Boston, and I would say the first 5 years I lived in Boston. So I remember my grandmother with her accent, her house smelled differently, the food tastes different, She would take a papaya pill for like her stomach, if something was going on with her stomach, She would drink teas a lot. So that was kind of like my first glimpse into food as medicine, teas as medicine, because that wasn't necessarily a part of my experience with my mom. She wasn't bringing that particular element to me, but I feel like that kind of introduced a different way of healing and just really managing your health. I think that kind of opened me up. When I think about it, that's my first exposure, even though I was young. Once I moved away from Boston, I would come and visit my grandmother. And that's when I would start to see other elements that made more sense to me as I got older. When I would go out with her and we would come in contact with some of her friends. And it's the first time I realized my grandmother spoke Spanish. We were walking in downtown Boston, and she saw one of her girlfriends, and she just broke out in fluent Spanish. And I was like, it was a shocking moment, right? So I think of these little elements in my life where I've been experienced to cultures that are kind of not what my day-to-day life was, but to understand there was something different out here, and to that there was a curiosity about it. So I feel like that's kind of the first introduction, I would say. And then it became a lot clearer through my midwifery education, because herbalism is rooted in midwifery, right? So I recall in my midwifery education feeling like that wasn't robust enough. We understood what traditional midwives were. We understood how they utilized the land and plant medicine and the natural process of delivering babies. And there's just was this element that I just wanted to know more. And I would feel like my midwifery education put me in a space where I wanted to understand herbalism more. I wanted to understand traditional practices because, birth is a natural physiological process, and we have definitely made it into this medicine space. And it's not necessary, and there are other ways to really support this natural process. So I just kind of leaned more into it and just kind of kept my ear open and just kind of awaited for experiences where I could learn more, so I just stayed open to that. So I would say those are the beginning, like the roots of it. And then later on, it kind of takes hold through another international experience when as I lived in Liberia through the Peace Corps. And then I had this really organic introduction to herbalism, where it left me feeling like you need to know this specialty. It's a part of who you are, and it was something that I realized that wasn't given to me just straightforwardly. Like, this is something you're gonna have to work for. This is something you're gonna have to like dig deep for. Like, this is not just common knowledge that's just waiting to be shared with you. You're gonna have to want to seek that, and I think that's part of it too. You have to know there's something more, and then you want to have to seek that information because something is pulling you towards it, and you may not always know what it is, but you know that I'm supposed to know this information. And so that's kind of where I feel like this is something I really want to learn more about.
Did you find it easy to seek out and connect with those elders or wisdom keepers, or was that a difficult part, was actually finding people to share the knowledge?
No, I feel like it was probably one of the most easiest things because it's so natural to their being. So it's not something that's hidden. It's not something that it's like we go to this first, right? Because this is what we have. So it's right there in your face. It's not like something you have to kind of go seek out, and I would say the same thing with an experience in Jamaica. Like, people use herbs and plants, to heal and to deal with different ailments and things like that. So it's like that medicine is first. So it's easier, I feel like, to connect with someone who knows plant medicine because they basically use it all the time. They go to the bush and go get this plant, and put it in this pot of water, and you drinking this in a tea in 15 minutes, and you're feeling better. And you're just like, wow, something so natural, so organic, it's just right at our fingertips, but somehow the knowledge escaped you because of where you live. That's kind of how I feel.
And I'm hearing you talk about herbalism and plant medicine in a broad way. Yes. And especially in Jamaica, was cannabis a part of that? Was it a staple of that? Or is it something that is kind of a little bit separate?
No, it's definitely a part of it. It's for me, cannabis was the gateway for me to really get into herbalism, to understand, because I enjoy the plant, and because it just it connects with me and some of my family members. That's another thing, that there's this connection with your line. This is maybe your family's preferred plant, or sacred plant. That's what I'm seeing in my family kind of line, particularly on that side. I have a niece, I have a cousin, and we often have conversations about the plant. And so cannabis really opened the door to really wanting to really learn more about sacred plants and plant medicine, because we could see the impact of that, using that medicine. For me, I could see the impact of utilizing that medicine. And because cannabis is really ingrained a lot within the Jamaican culture, particularly the Rastafarian culture, it's easily to be accessed. There's constant knowledge out there about the plant. So you get this understanding about the plant that you would never get if you didn't talk to someone from that culture. So you learn how to use the plant differently. Rastafarians taught how to use the plant differently, right? as well as how to grow the plant. And knowing that outdoors is the preferred place for this plant, right? So you get sacred knowledge about the plant so you can make a good choice about how you utilize it. We think about the best quality. The best quality to me is not the stuff grown indoors and under artificial lights. No, the best quality cannabis is grown outdoors, where you have someone who is tending to the plant, who loves the plant, and it's a part of their culture. So they love it and revere it in a different way. And I think that energy is really expressed to me in Jamaica.
Oh, yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I want to shift gears just a little bit because as a nurse trained in Western medicine, how do you integrate ancestral wisdom into your practice without compromising either path?
I think really having great relationships as a nurse. I think, I have these other specialties, as you mentioned, but I'm a nurse in my core and every being. So because of that, and because of my holistic approach, I think it's important to know who you're communicating with, try to really understand some of their challenges, and then present variety of ways to deal with whatever may be going on. So sometimes it's an intuition around something, right? It's feeling like, they've tried a lot of different things, but something may tell me that cannabis may be something that works for them, right? So I think it's just a matter of really establishing trust, but then also bringing forward the fact that plant medicine is important around your overall health and well-being, and to really help people understand that it has been removed a lot from Western medicine. So if you are seeking balance, if you are seeking other ways to treat, not alternative, but just in conjunction with, I think you really need a support. You need someone who can speak open and honestly about options, not just about cannabis, but any other type of plant that may be conducive to your healing. So I think it's trust, having open communication, and really understanding the challenges that person may be going through, so you can say whether or not this may be a good recommendation or not. But what I will say is that I don't hide the fact that I'm a cannabis nurse right now. When I see someone who could benefit, I let them know, I'm a cannabis nurse, even with a student sometimes. They may come in, some of the older students, I'll be like, I smoke cannabis. I use it by its name. I let them know. I don't say, I think I smell cannabis. I know what cannabis smells like. I smell cannabis. So just to let them know, I just want to hear what's going on, or, just to kind of get a sense that they're coming in contact with people who are not afraid to identify what they are seeing and smelling and all of that. And to make sure that they understand, not from I don't want to say responsible use for a child or a young adult, because that's not where I'm going, but understand the place for plant medicine, and how to utilize it for its highest good. And also just taking an opportunity to have a conversation about it. That's kind of what I do, to understand when are you using the plant? Why do you feel like you're using the plant, right? So they can kind of verbalize what's going on, and then you get an understanding as well as some of the things that certain populations are dealing with, a different level of stress or whatever it is that they feel like they're utilizing it from a medicinal purpose. We all know that cannabis use for the most part is medicinal, whether you realize that or not. So I just think it's about really just being open and coming off as a trusted person who is knowledgeable about the plant.
A lot of people start or experiment with cannabis in their teenage years, right? And going back to what you were talking about, intuition, can you maybe talk about what your theory or thoughts are around why a teenager would have that intuition or feel drawn to use this plant?
Yeah.
You think there's some kind of connection there of maybe ancestral wisdom or knowledge or internal knowing.
Exactly. Because they say the plant, you know, the medicine that's for you is growing around you. You understand? Like that's kind of, and that's how I see it sometimes. Like this cannabis is around, it's around right now in society because it's needed, or because people are connected to it, because it kind of, for the most part, decompresses. It takes away some of the stress. You know, people can think without having this pressure. So I think the intuition aspect of it is that, you know, you like it. You understand? It works for you. You have a good experience with it. You know, it's not harming you. You don't feel like, you don't see the negative aspects of it. So it makes you think like, wow, this plant may be for me. I kind of even look at it around certain foods that I have a affinity to. Like I just love this plant, this fruit called soursop. But it's a highly medicinal plant. You know, it's a highly medicinal fruit. It has a major anti-cancer properties and things like that. But I just love it. And so when I love something, it's like there's something in me that's connecting to this, that I'm supposed to be engaging with this, whether it's a specific type of plant or whether it's cannabis or anything like that. It's like, you have to acknowledge your body having a positive experience with this particular plant or with this medicine. So it's like being open to understanding what's really going on, like your feelings. And sometimes you don't really know that. You don't know that I just like this plant. You don't know why. But sometimes it takes a step back of thinking about, okay, you know, it's here. I have access to it. And when I have access to it, I utilize it and I feel better. But generally speaking, I've seen even in my own familial line where I feel like this is part of the lineage, to be quite honest with you, because I see it really straightforwardly on my father's side that's coming out of the Caribbean. And I have either, you know, cousins that are younger than me, or, you know, that are really connected to the plant. And I don't really believe that it's random. I don't, because I don't see it on the other side. You know what I mean? I just see it on the side where I feel the most connection to ancestral wisdom, because I see it, I can touch it. You know, like when you can see and touch the wisdom, they're sitting there in front of you. This elder is sitting there in front of you, sharing their knowledge. Like it does something different for you. You know, it's like that primary resource. Like you can't refute this. You understand? This is someone who knows and utilizes plant medicine all the time, and they're sharing their knowledge with you. And you have to understand that somehow you're being a reservoir or a receptacle for this information for a reason. And I think that that's part of it. The intuition is like, nothing is coming to me randomly. You know, there's a reason for everything. You know, you may take some time to put these pieces of the puzzle together, but it's certainly a puzzle, and it's certainly a picture that's being developed.
When you were talking, you made me think of, you know, as folks get older, they stop maybe sharing information the way that they used to. And so I love what you said, that you felt like it wasn't random, that you were a reservoir for that information. And to almost reframe it as like, what a gift to be able to sit with an elder and they have chosen you to share that information with.
Yes, it's an amazing feeling, because you know that the information that they're sharing is something that you would never get from a book. It only comes from sitting with an elder. And you're absolutely right. When an elder decides to download this information to you, you feel like chosen. You understand? You feel like this information is coming to you because you're supposed to do something with it. You know, that you are kind of like the torch bearer for this energy around certain plants, or just herbalism in general, or, you know, how you feel about cannabis. So I take it on as this is something that's laid in your lap, because this is something that you're supposed to do, and you have the energy for it. I'm gonna be the one that will go to different countries and will love to sit with anybody as a person who is a healer to anything you want to share with me, I want it. I want to know it. You understand? Because it's valuable information. It's showing respect for different cultures and how they heal. And I just love it. You know, I just feel like it does so much for me. It just enriches my life in so many ways, because it is a gift, you know, and not everyone gets it in that firsthand way where, you know, this is not your family member sharing. This is someone who just saw something in you, saw your enthusiasm, saw your desire seeking knowledge. Because when you really think about herbalism sometimes and plant medicine, the current generation is not seeking that knowledge. And they feel bad about that. They feel bad that they don't have anyone to download it to. So you have these beings out here who want the knowledge. They're like, well, come on, sweetie. Sit by the knee so I can give you the information. And I'm here for it. I'm really here for it.
So on that thread, what are some of the most profound lessons that you've received from traditional healers or elders about plant medicine as a whole?
I would say it's magical. That to understand the magic of plant medicine, how it speaks to you, how you get the information, how to use it, whether it's through dreams or someone from your line came down and had a dream and told you how to use it. So I'll give you this example. Sis Ivy, who's a great herbalist in Jamaica, who has really taken time to like download different things and share information. She shared with me like one of the first times where her in a dream, she was told to get this particular plant and use and utilize it to treat like this. It was almost like a stone or something. And she got it in a dream, and her grandmother called her by her name, and she did it, and then she passed the stone, right? So I saw that was magical, you know, that how it came through. And then she also told me another story, how she just feels like the plants just hug her, right? They just kind of embrace her, like through their movements. And you know, we've seen different things where we've seen trees kind of lean in and do different things. So she really opened my eyes up to the magic of it. You know, if you can allow yourself to believe, right? I feel like that was some of that I've learned that through my elders, you know, who have worked with the plants and have like that's a part of them, like it's ingrained, and then they share this knowledge where you're just like, this is some magical stuff going on right here. And you just wait for your magical time to happen. You wait for your little magical moments, right? Because it's gonna happen. It's just how it kind of works. But I would say understanding the magic, the specialness of it, the sacredness of this, and that comes through things that are not tangible, but are spiritual aspects of it. And I would think that for me, because I saw that, it really made me want to understand more of the spiritual aspects of cannabis and how there's a level of elevation that can happen, right? And that kind of transcends our normal kind of physical place that we live and reside. And you just kind of like are open to it. And I just kind of like love it from that perspective, that I believe in magic, okay? I believe in like intuition and just all things that you can't touch, but you know are there.
You know, childbirth is a magical experience in and of itself. And you are a school nurse and an herbalist and all of these things, but you're also a midwife. Yes. So in what ways do you see cannabis supporting women in pregnancy, birth, postpartum, just basic reproductive health from an ancestral perspective?
From an ancestral perspective, and as it relates to cannabis and all aspects of like childbirth and childbearing years, I feel like it hits on every level. You know, I can't believe that we tell people that they can't utilize this plant when we know it has so many beneficial properties that target so many different things and so many aspects that someone may go through, particularly a woman who's doing her childbearing years or who may go. I think about, you know, just the nausea and vomiting that goes with the first kind of trimesters, and is there a place for cannabis there? Thinking about pain management, not necessarily smoking it. We know that there's so many ways that we can consume and take in the plant, and just really feeling like ultimately I want people to do what they feel is right. I feel like I want them to do what feels intuitive to them. Like, we don't need someone to always tell us this is what you need to do, you can't do this. Like, you're crazy. I'm gonna do what the hell my spirit is telling me to do, because that is the ancestral wisdom. So it's almost like teaching people how to listen to themselves, how to listen to the communication that happens on a spiritual level that we weren't always taught how to tap into. So it's like, I can hear, right? We have certain gifts, and I will say I can hear certain things. So when someone says something to me or spiritually, I hear it, right? And it doesn't throw me off. So I think it's really understanding that the communication is coming from within, and understanding how to listen to it and then decide what we're going to do about that, outside of societal rules or what they said, the research said, like, you're not going to tell me that you consuming cannabis this one time is going to throw this whole situation off. It's not. We know that people are utilizing the plant all the time. You understand? And I allow people to be, and I support the use. Meaning, if you are open with me and you're letting me know what's going on, I take it from a perspective where I honor plant medicine. And I'm never going to tell someone how to utilize a plant, or, that this is bad, or shame them in that. No, we don't know how they came to the point where they're utilizing certain plant medicine. I just like to share all the information so they are aware. But I think the ancestral part is really listening and tapping in, and how to utilize what you received, in a way where it just kind of transcends any other fear that you may have.
You kind of touched on something here and I want to follow up on. So can you speak to the importance of ritual and presence when working in these healing spaces, and how can modern nurses incorporate intention into clinical care?
Well, that's a deep one. I think because not everyone is at the same spot. Not everyone is at the same understanding about plant medicine. So, or ancestral wisdom, or that cultural aspect that, we're taught to respect and be confident and competent in. I think it's really, I don't know, that's a hard one, Heather, because our society doesn't necessarily lay that foundation for that openness, So if you're a closed-minded person, or you're, a rule follower, whatever, like, you're gonna not always be able to support in that way. So I think it's really like we have to kind of go back a little bit around our education, around how we look at nursing and what we're teaching, and really going back to that holistic approach. And I think we need to do a better job of really exposing our healthcare workers and our healers to understanding that this is just as a part of it as any other type of pathophys you may understand or you may have been taught. And I think that we just don't have enough of us out here in that way, in that space, to really open that and pull that forward. So I think our network and, doing some of the work that CNN does really starts to open up the space of this is really a different aspect of nursing, of healing. And that while not all of us have it, we do have a crew. We do have these beacons out here that we can go to. And I think we need to kind of push out in our own areas, our own place, our own spaces, our own things that we have an affinity to, and really start to open that piece up. So I don't know. It's challenging though, Heather, and I think that our education right now doesn't always support this piece, although we're moving there. We're seeing that higher level of consciousness of it's there. I feel like we're on the brink of it, and people need to be able to embrace that, not fear that piece. Because I feel like as humans, we are evolving. We definitely are in this shift of evolving, and there's this higher aspect of it, of being human, that we're not really familiar with, but we have a few that we're familiar with, that we understand this is where we're going, and we need to kind of be a support. And I just think like raising awareness, being able to have good conversations, I think is like the start.
So what role do you believe cannabis nurses have in decolonizing healthcare, in returning plant medicine to communities that have long held this knowledge?
Wow. I feel like cannabis nurses, like we all come to this space for different reasons. There's different draws to this specialty. And I think you have to be reflective of what brought you to the plant, right? And if you have an understanding of what brought you to the plant, it's often easier to share that with someone else. We have to understand our ability to be transformational leaders, and using that energy to really shift the perspective. So we have to like be the trailblazers because we understand the plant in a different way in whatever aspect that we are focused on. For me, cannabis led me to want to understand plant medicine in general. Like that's the plant that I like opened the door, but I also understand that there are a lot of other fabulous plants out here that I have no clue about, that I only will understand through travel or just through someone, an elder, kind of sharing certain knowledge with me. But I think we have to be leaders, and utilize those skills to really decolonize that, to really just call it out and not be fearful, to stand in our truth of knowledge and experience. And I think ultimately that's how things shift. And then again, also just having to lay a foundation in how people become nurses that opens them up to this piece, because through midwifery is where I kind of was open. So it was through an educational process. It wasn't robust. It was really surface. But ultimately, it kind of opened up this acceptability around herbalism and how it is utilized in health and healing, and also in childbirth and postpartum and things like that. So how to infuse certain knowledge through education, and then I believe these pathways open up for you to do it in the way in which you do it. So Heather does it in the way that Heather does it. Shakira does it in the way that Shakira does it. Marcy does it in the way that Marcy does it. But we're all out here collectively doing it and targeting and hitting it from all aspects. So I just think that we as cannabis nurses have to like carry this energy where we're touching people to like activate them. Boom, boom, boom. And how do you activate someone, right? And that's your own specialty, how you activate an individual. And then what they do with that activation, and how their gift wants to transform or change a scenario, or change a value, or just change an idea that doesn't hold to be true anymore. And that. And it's like, this is impacting people in a negative way. And I think nursing, we are always looking on how to improve something, how we can help someone in a better way. And I think that that's kind of how I see it happening. Like cannabis makes you think about things in a different way. When we understand how well versed the plant is, it just kind of piques your curiosity, right? And how can you help others with this well-versed plant? How do we stop suffering? How do we eat? There's just a lot, I think, to be done. And cannabis nurses are, to me, already in this very open, have come into this open space. Like I feel like we're open in a different way in general. I think to stand in the truth of I'm a cannabis nurse, whether you use cannabis or not, You are making a statement about your beliefs around healing, options about healing, understanding that it's not just static. There are many ways to heal and utilize medicine. You just have to understand that it's just not this one way. How do you tap into other options and other ways? And you need guidance. You really do need guidance. And so we know nurses are the most trusted profession out here, but I still don't always think that people will come to a nurse and be like, yo, what's up with the cannabis? Not unless they know you have this information, but we have to feel like there's no stigma around it and move forward in that space. So like, oh damn, Shakira's all open and honest and she got all her little degrees and everything. You know what I mean? So, you start listening in a different way. And that's what I hope, that's why I see cannabis nurses really touching and decolonizing medicine, particularly in this country.
Oh, that's so beautiful. So I want to open up a little bit about the fact that you just came back from a trip.
Yeah. Well, for me, I kind of took last year, I kind of took a little pause back from actively talking about plant medicine. And this kind of year, I really wanted to think kind of creatively about the plant cannabis and what I love about the plant. I love the way it grows. I love the way it smells. I love the way it looks. All of these different things. I love to see people who are utilizing the plant from different cultures. So I just got this idea, I really want to do a creative kind of visual display around cannabis and culture. And so I felt like, because I was going to Colombia, which has a strong Afro presence due to slavery, so they had one of the first free Black villages in Colombia, which I went to, called Palenque. And I thought maybe this would be a good opportunity to really kind of, see what's going on in this particular community. Not really knowing whether or not I was going to come across maybe an experience that I would want to put in my book, but definitely open to seeing what was going on, right? So what I realized is that cannabis is not present. It's not really present like that in Colombia. We have access to it in a way that I didn't really understand that level of access until I went to Colombia and I understood that it's not really there like that. So it makes me think, well, what are our folks using? What are Black and brown people using to take off stress, or to, what are they using? I didn't really get that piece, but it's not cannabis, right? So one of the things that I learned on this particular travel is that not everybody reveres the plant the way we do. Even though you may think that certain communities may understand the plant to be powerful, not necessarily. So I was kind of taken aback that cannabis wasn't widely utilized. From my experience in Colombia, which is limited, it wasn't widely utilized. It wasn't widely accessible. There was definitely a fear around the plant. Holding the plant, having it in your possession, the quality of it. It was just really kind of bizarre. It was almost like I felt like I kind of went back in time a little bit around the plant, and it felt really odd, that energetically you still have communities who don't have the same love and respect for the plant that you do. And what does that really mean for you? As someone who is seeking knowledge, gains that knowledge through travel and experiences, I think you have to be prepared to learn information that you didn't necessarily expect. So a lot of times when I think about folks of color, I think about people who don't have problems using the plant. It's just kind of a common energy, I feel. Not like everybody utilizes cannabis. No, I'm not saying that, but I expect Black folks to use cannabis. I feel like I do. So and just to keep it 100, if I'm out and about in a city that's not known to me, I'm going to go to a person of color, particularly a Black person, and ask about the plant, before I would ask anybody else. So, and not to say that didn't still happened, and that was I was able to still receive information. It just wasn't as common as I thought it would be, right? So then it kind of forced me to think about, how am I going to kind of capture the knowledge that I gained in Colombia? And what I think I came away with is that this plant doesn't mean the same to everyone. You know what I mean? Like, it's not necessarily respected in different countries. Even though you have a strong community of people who look like you, it's still not necessarily their culture. And so you kind of have to let that go. No worries. But you know, there is plant medicine around. You do know that there is a medicine person around. And I did come across a medicine person in this free Black village called Palenque, which is about an hour and a half outside of Cartagena. And what I saw was the connections of Black people coming through the transatlantic slave trade. You know, you continually see the same patterns. You continually see that people from the same tribes and same parts of Africa came through these regions. And that's been part of my kind of wanting to understand too, is like, we all got dropped off in different places, right? But what did you do in your spot? You understand? How did you evolve in your place? Because it looks different, but a lot of times there's a lot of similarities as well. And I think going to Colombia and seeing the similarities around how people communicate through their hair, how people still brought seeds in their hair, I thought was very consistent, a theme that I see in different places, whether it's whether it's in Jamaica, United States, now Colombia. I can say that certain ways of communicating and bringing our knowledge from that particular homeland exists. And, you know, and that is the kind of the proof of existence, the proof that this did happen like this. You know what I mean? And this is how we kind of dealt with the situation. This is how we evolved. So I'm always kind of curious about healing, because, you know, we all have to heal. You know, no one goes through life unscathed, right? So how do you go about doing that? And I'm always kind of curious through my travels to understand that piece. So I didn't fully get a strong understanding, but I did see that not all communities feel good about cannabis the way we feel good about cannabis. And that's okay. You know, I respect the countries that I visit. I still try to be myself in these places, but sometimes it can be a challenge, right? So you take your experiences, you kind of pull from them what you received. A lot of times from my experience in cannabis, it kind of made me feel like, well, my experience with cannabis in Colombia made me rely on my spirituality most for protection, because how you feel about the plant kind of gives me a little energy about your country a little bit. You know what I mean? It kind of a little bit of a marker. You know, countries are still developing. They're still trying to engage in globalization in a way that they hadn't before, and they're coming across different groups of people because of it. You know, people are traveling. What I saw is that people are traveling from all over the world to Colombia because it's kind of becoming a hot tourist spot. And I think that they're really dealing with different cultures coming to them now, and they don't always know how to deal with that. And that's fair, you know, that's fair. And then I also feel like America has put a bad taste in people's mouths right now. And, you know, South America, Central America, they always tend to have feelings that are not the greatest about America, and we definitely understand why. And that may also be spilling over into certain experiences as well.
Were you able, and this is my last question, were you able to identify maybe if they're not utilizing the Black Colombian culture is not utilizing cannabis, were you able to identify plant medicines that they are using to help, as you were saying, heal their soul and stay connected to the ancestral wisdom?
Right. I would say that I didn't like identify it in a way where I was like, oh, this is the plant. I came across it in a way where I came across a traditional medicine person, and he was able to talk about herbs that they use for general ailments. And I saw the connection of certain plants. He mentioned the cerasee plant, and it definitely is a plant that they utilize in Jamaica as well. So not in that straightforward way how we utilize cannabis sometimes in this different like spiritual realm that we can utilize in the spiritual realm. I didn't really figure that piece out yet. And I think that's a different type of trip. You know what I'm saying? That's a different type of planning. That's a different like seeking of a specific type of person, you know, where they understand what you're trying to do.
Wonderful. This has been so informative. Thank you so much, Shakira.
Yeah, I'm glad that this was a experience, you know, just to talk about it. You know, sometimes you don't talk about it a lot, and your questions were really kind of pulled out some different energy around how I got to this place, you know, and how I'm really grateful that cannabis has been something that has been the catalyst to kind of engage me in other aspects of healing. And it holds my attention. It's constantly like I'm constantly learning, and I just appreciate the plant so much because of that, you know. And I'm continually like trying to find my way in the space, to be quite honest. You know, for me, cannabis brings the creative energy for me, right? So, you know, we have some of our like the scientific energy, and we have that space and all of that. But for me, it's like I want to show the beauty of the plant, you know, the cultural beauty of the plant, how people are utilizing it, and from a very visual way, because that's the piece that stimulates me. You know, like when I see a beautiful cannabis plant, I'm just like, damn, I'm fascinated. I'm completely fascinated by this plant. I'm completely fascinated by the smell, all of that, right? And I know I'm not the only one. I'm not, and as well as just the fun that can happen when you engage with the plant. I think that's also something that I want to capture as well. So I'm still thinking about ways to do that. But for me, it feels like it will be creative projects, you know, things that continue to pull me out into traveling. Maybe it's writing, you know, I don't know if there's a children's book out here that really kind of starts to, you know, but it's the visual piece, that color, that vibrant energy that helps people connect into who they are, you know, and to really understand that there's definitely another lane here. There's levels to this, right? But we have to be open to the levels. And it's not just open to cannabis, it's open to just any type of healing plant, you know, that may be your plant, and helping people understand what connection to certain medicine looks like. It's a desire of it. It's a curiosity about it. You know, again, it's not happening just by circumstance. And I think we have to get to that place in society where we are not fearful. You know, and an experience in Colombia allowed me to see that society still wants to put a fear in you regarding the plant, right? And deep down inside, my spiritual being knew that I was going to be protected from any harm because of the connection I may have had with the plant. You understand? So then I had that belief that, you know, I'm not going to have this crazy negative experience with cannabis in a foreign country, right? I just felt protected in that. And I called on protection. You know, I shared a story with Heather earlier, but ultimately I got the takeaway is that there are many societies out here that still want to place fear in you regarding the plant. And that's real. That's real.
Yeah, this has been so great. Thank you, Shakira, for guiding us through this beautiful return to our roots. Your stories, your reverence for tradition, and your commitment to walking with humility and courage have touched every soul who is here and listened to your words today. In this place, we have been reminded that cannabis is more than a compound or a product. It is a plant with a lineage, a sacred thread that ties us to those who came before, to the earth, and to the calling we hold as nurses to be stewards of healing. So let this be a call to every nurse to reconnect with your roots, to seek wisdom beyond textbooks, and practice in ways that heals not only the body, but the spirit of your communities. Thank you to everyone who joined us here today. And until next time, walk gently, speak boldly, and remember, the past is a pathway. Thank you, everyone.